The sky was a dull grey that morning, as if it already knew that something was wrong. Lorotto woke up early to the sound of her sister's voice calling her. Thandi's voice was usually bright and full of energy, but this morning, it was a faint, trembling sound. Lorotto. Thandi's voice was tinged with fear. Lorotto rushed into her sister's room to find Thandi sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands in disbelief. Her fingers were swollen, puffy as though they had been inflated like balloons. The skin stretched so tightly across her hands that it looked like it might tear at any moment. What is this? Thandi stammered, eyes wide with horror. Lorotto's heart raced. She tried to comfort her sister, brushing off the incident as an allergic reaction, perhaps something she touched in the garden. But deep down, Lorotto felt a gnawing sense of dread. They hadn't planted anything new, and Thandi hadn't been outside much. "Let's get you to Mama Kethawi," Lorotto suggested, forcing a smile. "She'll know what to do." But even Mama Kethawi, the village's trusted healer, was at a loss. She prepared her herbs, chanting softly over Thandi's hands as she applied a cooling paste. "It's just a small swelling," Mama Kethawi said with forced cheerfulness. "It should go down by morning." But the swelling didn't go down. In fact, it spread. By the next morning, Thandi's hands were even larger, and her feet had begun to swell too. She could hardly walk without pain. Mama Kethawi's face grew serious as she examined Thandi again. "I don't understand," she muttered under her breath. "This isn't natural." Over the next few days, Thandi's body continued to swell. Her arms, her legs, even her face, every part of her seemed to be growing larger, heavier. Her skin stretched tighter with each passing day, until she was barely recognizable. The swelling made it hard for her to move, and soon, Thandi was confined to her bed, her voice barely a whisper. "It feels like something is weighing me down, Lorotto," she whispered one evening, her voice trembling with fear. "Like something wants to consume me from the inside." Lorotto's heart ached to see her sister like this. She had always been the strong one, the protector, but now she felt powerless. The doctors in the town couldn't help either. Dr. Mbatha, the most skilled physician in the area, examined Thandi, running every test he knew. But nothing seemed to explain what was happening to her. "Her organs are fine. There's no infection, no disease I can recognize," he said, shaking his head. "It's as if her body is reacting to something that isn't there." Desperate, Lorotto turned back to Mama Kethawi. This time, she came with her mother, both of them on the brink of tears. "Mama Kethawi," Lorotto pleaded, "there has to be something, some curse or spirit that's doing this to her. Please, help us understand." Mama Kethawi's eyes narrowed as she looked at Lorotto, her face a mask of worry. "I've heard of such things before, but only in old stories. Sometimes, when an ancestor is wronged, their spirit clings to the family, causing pain for generations." Lorotto and her mother listened in silence as Mama Kethawi continued. "Your family may have a curse. This kind of suffering doesn't come from a simple illness. It comes from deep-rooted pain that has been left unhealed." Their mother shook her head, a look of disbelief in her eyes. "But we have no such history. No curse, no feuds that I know of." Mama Kethawi placed a hand on their mother's shoulder. "Sometimes, these stories are buried deep. You must look into your family's past. Perhaps your mother or grandmother knows more." With this new glimmer of hope, Lorotto returned home and went to her grandmother, Nomalanga, an old woman who rarely spoke of the past. As she approached her grandmother's room, she could see Nomalanga sitting by the window, gazing into the distance. "Grandmother," Lorotto said softly, taking a seat beside her, "please, do you know of any curse in our family? Something that might explain what's happening to Thandi." Nomalanga's face grew still. She turned to look at Lorotto with sorrowful eyes. "I had hoped this day would never come," she murmured. "But it seems that the spirit of Nkosazana has finally returned to claim her due." "Nkosazana?" Lorotto asked, her heart pounding. "Our ancestor," Nomalanga said with a sigh. "Many years ago, Nkosazana fell in love with a man from a rival clan. She defied her family and the rules of her people. But instead of accepting her, the man betrayed her, and her own family disowned her. Alone and heartbroken, she died young. And her spirit vowed that our family would suffer until her story was acknowledged and her memory honored. Nomalanga's voice broke, her old hands trembling. Each generation has felt the weight of her pain in small ways, but we ignored it. I never thought it would come to this. Lorotto felt a cold chill run down her spine. Is there a way to stop it? Yes, Nomalanga whispered. There is an old amulet that belonged to Nkosazana. It's buried behind the house, beneath the ancient baobab tree. If you find it, and perform the ritual of forgiveness, you may be able to calm her spirit. Without wasting any time, Lorotto and her mother went to the tree and began digging. After hours of searching, they finally unearthed a small, rusted amulet, a piece of Nkosazana's past. The ritual. On the night of the new moon, Lorotto, Mama Kethawi, and Nomalanga gathered around Thandi's bed. Her body was swollen to twice its normal size. Her skin stretched so thin that she looked as though she might burst at any moment. Lorotto held the amulet tightly, feeling the weight of their ancestors' pain in her hands. Nkosazana, Lorotto began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. We are your family. We have wronged you, and we are sorry. We acknowledge your suffering, and we ask for your forgiveness. Please, release Thandi and let us honor your memory. As Lorotto spoke, a chill filled the room, a cold wind swirling around them. It felt as though they were no longer alone, as if a shadow had entered the room, watching them, judging them. Thandi's body trembled, and for a moment, her face twisted in pain. But then, slowly, the swelling began to fade. The shadow lifted, the room growing still and warm. Lorotto felt a strange sense of peace settle over them. By dawn, Thandi was herself again, weak and frail, but finally free of the swelling that had tormented her. Epilogue. The family never forgot the ordeal, nor the spirit of Nkosazana. They built a small shrine for her beneath the baobab tree, keeping her memory alive for future generations. The curse had been lifted, but the lesson remained. The past has a way of returning if we ignore it. Some wounds need healing, even those that are hidden in the depths of history.